The lands of Ireland and Scotland, wild, untamed, a mosaic of green hills, dark forests and windswept coasts. These were the stages for epic dramas, dramas of power, dramas of ambition. Here, in these rugged landscapes, Gaelic kingdoms rose and fell. They clashed like storm waves against ancient cliffs. The air itself seemed to hum with the tension of 1,000 simmering feuds. This was a time of heroes and a time of villains. Often they were one and the same. The very soil was soaked in the blood of kings and warriors, a testament to the unending struggle for dominance. Imagine a map, not of neat defined countries, but of shifting territories, fluid boundaries, dozens of small kingdoms, the in-island and similar petty realms in what would become Scotland. Each was ruled by a king, or perhaps more accurately, a chieftain. These kings were constantly vying for more land, more cattle, more honor. Alliances were made, alliances were broken, often in the same breath. Betrayal was a common currency, loyalty a precious and often fleeting commodity. The only constant was change and the ever-present threat of war. A king's reign was rarely peaceful. Who were these Gaelic kings? They were not emperors in golden palaces. They were not distant, godlike figures. A Gaelic king, was often closer to a tribal leader, a first among equals, perhaps. But an equal who had to constantly prove his worth. He was expected to lead his men in battle, to dispense justice, to be generous to his followers. His authority came from his lineage, from his personal prowess, and from the acclamation of his people, or at least the powerful nobles who chose him. He was the protector of his small kingdom. Their rule was anything but centralized. Forget tidy bureaucracies, forget standing armies in the modern sense. Power was diffuse. It flowed through complex webs of kinship and obligation. In Ireland, the system of succession was often an heir, was chosen during the king's lifetime. Usually from his extended family, that this was meant to ensure a strong successor, but it often led to more bloodshed as rival candidates fought for the position. Brecon law, the ancient legal system, governed daily life. It was intricate. The rivalry between the Uí Néill and the kings of Munster, particularly the Eóganachta, was a backbone of Irish history. For centuries, these powerful dynasties clashed. They fought for the coveted title of High King at Tara. This wasn't just about a crown. It was about prestige. It was about tribute. It was about being the dominant force in the land. Battles were frequent, brutal. Sometimes one side gained the upper hand, sometimes the other. The balance of power shifted like sand dunes in the wind. This long feud weakened both. It created opportunities for others. Then came a man who would change everything. Brian Boru of the Dál Riata, a smaller Munster dynasty. He rose from obscurity, through cunning, through ruthless ambition, through military genius. He challenged the old order. He challenged Máel Sechnaill II, the Uí Néill High King. Their rivalry was personal. It was epic. Brian eventually seized the High Kingship. He united, for a brief glorious moment, much of Ireland. His story culminated at the Battle of Clontarf in 1014, a bloody victory against the Vikings and their Irish allies. Brian died, but his legend lived on, a symbol of Irish resistance. In Scotland, the Dál Riata Kings faced their own existential struggles. They were newcomers, in a sense. The arrival of Christianity in the 5th century was a profound shock, a revolution. It challenged the old pagan beliefs, the power of the Druids, the very nature of kingship. Kings were once seen as semi-divine, connected to the land, to the gods of nature. Christianity brought a new god, a new morality, a new source of authority. Some kings resisted, some embraced the new faith. Often they blended the old and the new, creating a unique Gaelic Christianity where saints could be as fierce as warriors and monasteries as powerful as fortresses. This new faith would reshape the Gaelic world. Monasteries became vital centres, not just of prayer, but of learning, of wealth, of political influence. Great monastic settlements like Clonmacnoise in Ireland or Iona in Scotland. They were like towns. They held vast lands. They had armies of tenants and workers. Abbots were often as powerful as kings. Sometimes they were from the same royal families. These monasteries preserved knowledge. They wrote the annals, the histories, our main source for this turbulent period. The constant infighting among Irish kings had devastating long-term consequences. While kings like Brian Boru achieved temporary unity, it rarely lasted. The deep-seated rivalries, the fragmented political landscape, this made Ireland vulnerable. When the Normans arrived in 1169, they found a land divided, a land where ambitious Irish kings were willing to ally with the newcomers, to use them against their own rivals. This was a fatal miscalculation. The Normans came to help. They stayed to conquer. The dream of a unified, independent Gaelic Ireland began to fade. For Irish Gaelic society, the Norman invasion was a catastrophe. It marked the beginning of centuries of foreign domination, of land confiscations, of cultural suppression. The old Gaelic order, with its Brecon law and its petty kingdoms, began to crumble. Some Gaelic lords resisted fiercely. For generations, others assimilated. They became Normanized. The vibrant, complex world of the Gaelic kings was slowly eroded. One common myth is that of a single, unified Celtic people, stretching across Ireland, Scotland, Wales and Brittany, fighting a common enemy. This is a romantic simplification. In the era of the Gaelic kings, identities were far more local, more tribal. An Uí Néill king felt little kinship with a Pictish warrior, or even an Eóganachta rival. They were all Gaels, perhaps, in a broad linguistic sense, but their loyalties were to their own kin, their own kingdom. The idea of a pan-Celtic identity is largely a later invention, a product of the 18th and 19th centuries. Brian Boru is often portrayed as the ultimate Irish patriot, the man who drove out the Vikings, and he was undoubtedly a remarkable leader, a brilliant general, but he was also a product of his time, a ruthless political operator. He rose to power through bloodshed and manipulation, just like his rivals. Imagine the sheer waste, the constant grinding warfare between Gaelic kings, year after year, generation after generation, resources poured into armies, into weapons, into fortifications, young men, the strength of their kingdoms cut down in their prime, cattle raided, crops burnt, communities devastated. This relentless internal conflict was a cancer, eating away at the strength of the Gaelic world. Each king sought his own glory, his own advantage. But the collective cost was enormous, a slow bleeding of strength, a weakening of the entire system. This internal weakness left the Gaelic kingdoms dangerously exposed. When new threats appeared on the horizon, they were often too divided, too exhausted by their own feuds, to mount a united defense. The Vikings exploited these divisions. They raided,